welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we are discussing what to expect at our Strength and Dignity Conference. Woo-hoo! So we're kind of going off script a little bit because we only have a couple more weeks and we want you guys to know as much as possible about what's coming, what we're going to do, what kind of fun we're going to have. And so today we're going to just get into that and kind of give you a picture of what the experience is like. And hopefully at the end, you will decide to join us. All right. So welcome, Nina. How
Yay.
is it today?
Yeah, we're here. And, something I'm really excited about this topic, because if you're stuck in a relationship and you're dealing with a challenging person, maybe you gave birth to this person. They live with you and you can't get rid of them. Or maybe you're married to them, or, they gave birth to you maybe, or you married into them. Like, we all have challenging people in our lives. And so talking about what it is we do at the conference, the walk away today is, at the very least, you're going to know the process through which we go through that works and overhauls relationships for so many people. So I'm stoked to share that information with people today.
Yeah, me too. So, all right, let's just jump in. I know that there's always conferences. There's no shortage of conferences, retreats, meetings. When you think about ministry or Christendom, we hear about them, we see them advertised online. We know that there's the kind where you kind of sit and there's a bunch of speakers or maybe some entertainment involved. That's not exactly what we do at the conference we host. So I wanted to ask, what's different and unique in your opinion about the Strength and Dignity Conference?
Yeah, gosh, I love that question. And I got I was on the phone yesterday with one of my clients who's coming, and I was talking about, when are you coming in? Do you need somebody to get you at the airport? And she said, "Oh, I'm not flying into Ohio." I said, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, I met," and she gave me the name of somebody last year at the conference, and I'm flying into Indiana, and we're going to drive I'm going to stay overnight with her, and then we're going to drive. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, how did you get to be that close with somebody that you'll fly, like you'll stay overnight at her house?" She goes, "We've been talking every week and praying together every week since the conference. I met her there last year."
Oh, wow.
I know. And the thing is that's not an isolated incident. So many of us have, and me too, years ago, I struggled with having close female friendships where they were, the people you could call at 2:00 in the morning and say, "Hey, will you help me bury this body? I did this thing." And they'd be like, "Yeah, I'm coming over." And then they'd be like, "Okay, so let's talk about this thing you did. What's going on with you?" So the people that, you connect deeply with, well, that happens. And that's a side effect. Like, that's not the reason to come.
Right.
but,
Yeah.
but I have so many people that have said, "Oh, I met my best friend."
Wow.
Yeah. They didn't even know this person. They come to this conference and they meet someone, they connect with someone. And the neat thing about it is that it's a confidential environment where we learn what's the process to go through to heal from the stuff that keeps us stuck so that we can show up differently in our relationships. And when you go through that, you are learning that you're not alone in your struggle. And we give you 40 questions that are proven scientifically to help you deeply connect with other people in your lives. And we ask you to try that. So you mentioned what's different. Well, we practice. We give you a little bit of information and we give you some time to interact with it, either with the people there, or we facilitate an experience with the Lord. We do this a number of different times. And then also, Llewellyn will be doing some stretching exercises and a devotional every day. Yeah. So I was just sitting here thinking, like, one of the ways I bonded with everybody, the last conference I actually physically attended, because the last one I had COVID, so I did it from Zoom. But yeah, so I don't even remember the beginning of exercise, but at the end of it, I was awake. But I bonded with these women doing stretching. So that was kind of funny. And I'm not coordinated. It was hilarious. It was so funny. And you know, and we don't sweat. It's not serious exercise, but it's community and it's conversation. And there's a lot of unscripted time to get to know people and be close. And then there's also facilitated activity where we walk you through the process of healing and overcoming and learning how to deal with the conflicts that you have, what to say and how to say it style, even very personal attention as well to your specific situations. So that's kind of fun.
That is fun. And we only do this once a year, which makes it even more special. If you're a part of Strength and Dignity or a greater impact in any way, it's been online for the most part. So this is the one time during the year where we can get together and really hug on each other and be in each other's faces. And, that's just a different experience altogether,
Mhm.
So I remember my first time going. I had been in the course for about a year. So there was a lot of interacting online, and I had really had some, in-depth conversations with some of the sisters and the private rooms or the DMs. But once I got there, it just opened up an entire level for me, different level for me of how to apply the information.
Mhm.
Suddenly you're dealing with real people in real life situations,
Mhm.
having real conversations, and the Lord shows up in a way that, you don't necessarily, not that the Lord can't show up in any environment, but when sisters get together and we join hands and hearts, something amazing happens. And so I just say that to say, if you're in the course, it's still worth coming because the experience is different. And I don't know, do you agree with that?
I
Or
totally agree with that. Like we talk a lot about boundaries in the course, and people can ask questions and all that. But like what we're going to do this year is we're going to play a game um, called Whose Yard Is It Anyway? And it's part of our boundaries basics, our boundaries boot camp, if you will, session that we're going to navigate some very real situations that people in the room are going to contribute to and say, okay, here's what I was dealing with, so if you've got, this is a real common one. And I had this happen this morning in a coaching call, actually. My client said to me, okay, so we're not going to meet next week because I know you need to get ready for the conference. And I said, what? She goes, well, I know that you're working on the conference. And so, we don't need to meet next week. And I said, is there something you need to do that morning? And she said, well, no. I said, then how do you know I need to work on the conference during our coaching time? She
Mm.
goes, well, it's just coming up. I mean, you must be panicked. And I was like, I said, I appreciate your concern for me. I'm not going to think about the conference until next week. I've been doing this for a long time. And then no, it's just fun. There's no stress, there's no nothing. And I appreciate your concern, but it's my yard. So I'm going to manage my time, and it has nothing to do with our coaching call. So if you have something you need to do, that's different. You let me know and I'm happy to accommodate you.
Right.
And she's like, oh, I was in your yard. I said, yeah. It was just, and then we had a really good laugh about it. And she's incredible. Like I love my clients, and she's told me I can share stories from,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
So yeah, I know, right? But the funny thing is like, how often do we do that? We make an assumption. I've done it too. You make an assumption about something you're doing with somebody, or, on somebody's, time schedule or whatever. And then you make a decision that is really a decision for them
Right.
when you don't need to do that,
Yeah.
right? And I think we're naturally wired to do this because we crank out kids. And then we have to make so many decisions for these little people so they don't die um for so many years. Ah, yeah. But the whole, how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna learn.
I think the interesting thing about her, and not to interrupt you, but like her intent was positive.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
she was completely thinking about you,
Yeah.
and was willing to, give up that time
Hmm.
versus, where somebody might be taking something from you in your yard. She was trying to, help. And I thought, wow, we can violate each other even with good intentions.
Oh, man. Yeah, I didn't feel violated at all. I thought it was sweet of her, but I was also like, no, that's not necessary, like at all, right?
Yeah.
And how many times do we do that? We have somebody that comes up, like think of kids at church. How many times does a parent come up to you and say, well, your son last week or today did blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay. And the kids in high school or junior high, nobody's gonna, well, I don't know if nobody, but some people probably won't like this, but my response to that was, gosh, that sounds like it was frustrating for you. You seem pretty upset. Oh yes, because he blah, blah, blah. And I'd hear all about it. And then I would, validate their experience and then, well, what are you going to do about this? I said, you know what? I think that if this bothers you, you should talk to him about it because it doesn't seem like it involves me at all. It doesn't seem like it's, anti-biblical.
Mhm.
And, I think that you have the issue with him. And so you should take it up with him. Whoa, people never like that.
Mhm.
So an adult feels disrespected because my kid had their phone out during, their small group time and wasn't listening and was on their phone instead of listening to them. And instead of saying, hey, put your phone away, be present. I want to interact with you. We're all here together. No, they sit and seethe and whatever and think badly and then get all worked up and then come tell me about it. It's like, don't do that. That's not helping my kid. That's not helping you. And oh boy, I've had people get upset with me over that. But you know what? That's the neat thing about being healed. And this is why people should come to the conference. It's like if anybody's sitting here saying, well, I can never do that. I just need to make everybody happy. Like if that's in you, and boy, do I know what that felt like.
Yeah.
That's not in me anymore. I don't serve man like I serve God. I don't obey man, right? I do serve man, but not it's a different heart. It's not good for me to rescue my kids or rescue other adults from conflict, especially when it's nothing that involves me. So,
Yeah, and like you said, it won't help him because I mean, when he's 25 or 30 or 40, are people going to go to you to tell him what, he got wrong or did wrong? That just it's not going to help him in the future.
well,
So,
and it's funny that you say that because I actually have a client that was really struggling with this thing. They're kids like in their 40s and they had borrowed money and my client had facilitated the conversation, had asked the friend, hey, will you loan my kids some money? They want to do XYZ and can you do this for them? I can't do it. And so they got a yes from their friend. The kid talks to the friend. The kid is 40. Okay. This is a grown up. So they have this conversation and then they're delinquent on making payments. And I don't know how long time passed or whatever, but the friend comes to my client and says, hey, your kid isn't paying me. And, we're, XYZ behind or blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then she's all twisted up in knots about it, and I can remember being in a seat like that, where somebody's problem was somebody else.
right.
They'd come to me with it
Mhm.
and it'd be like, oh, what do I do? How do I fix it? And so when we talked about it, I just asked a simple question: whose yard is that in?
Mhm.
Whose yard is that?
Mhm.
Well, it was her kid and her friends.
Mhm.
Her friend made the decision to loan the money. Her
Mhm.
kid made the decision to ask for it. She's not involved in that. So what she ended up doing was going back to her friend and saying, hey, you know what? I should have had my kid come to you on their own to ask for the money. I shouldn't have inserted myself into this thing. I think you need to talk to them about getting paid. Um, so they, navigated that discussion And now it's between the two of them. But how much pressure are we putting on ourselves by taking ownership over things that are not ours to own? And there's a proverb in the Bible that says, basically, if you get in the middle of two people's argument, it's like yanking a dog's ears. And if
Mhm.
you're a dog person, you know that if you do that, you're going to get bit.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we got to make sure that we stay in our yard and we don't tell people what they need for their yard. Right. And we don't interfere with other people's yards, and we don't let people pull us into their yard either. So, and it's a hard concept to figure out until you've done it enough. And it seems terrifying because most of us are people pleasers. I like to think of myself as a reformed people pleaser, although I still struggle with it once in a while, to be honest. But there's so much freedom there. And that's why he came. It's really why he came, to set the captives free. Like, no joke. Yeah, save us from ourselves, please. But yeah, so we're going to dig into that in a very deep level, because we can't be respected by other people if we're acting in this way around them or to them, with them. And then if we're not respected, then our respect to them means absolutely nothing. So in dealing with a challenging person, we're actually undermining our outcomes by people pleasing in those spaces.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And it is hard to grasp that, especially when you're like dealing with a daughter or son or a mother or father or spouse, like people that might be in the same house with you, that might share, space with you, or,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. It gets really muddy. And so I think this information is so necessary because we're just not naturally wired to think that way. It's like the spirit and the flesh, your flesh wants to please, and God is saying, no, come up higher. So there's so much growth that happens in these conversation and these sessions. So you mentioned healing, you mentioned freedom. I know healing is a part of the conference as
Mm-hmm.
well. Can you speak a little bit about what that's all about, the inner
Yeah.
healing that we do?
Yeah. So we have these reactions that we often don't take responsibility for. We blame the other person. So let's say you and I are in a conversation and
Mhm.
you say something and I take it personally and I get upset with you. What most people don't realize is that the action of me taking it personally, that's me taking offense, that's me bumping into a wound. It
Mhm.
really has nothing to do with what you just said, even if what you said was abusive. And that sounds kind of extreme, but being on the other side of this, I'm going to tell you that's 100% true. Okay. And I can also tell you that I have been a person decades ago where I was easily injured by other people's things. Like if somebody commented on my blog and it was mean to me, I would cry. And it's like, no, I'm not that person anymore. It doesn't bother me a bit. I have compassion for people that are mean most of the time. But what happens is we have these injuries from childhood that we don't do anything with. So when our mom or dad, and it's not that we're blaming our parents, they're doing their absolute best, but what is also true is that the enemy twists things, and you could have them, your parents could have been in the most perfect parenting moment, and the enemy will twist that. And you end up believing something in that moment, or maybe they were just tired or overstressed or worked, overworked, whatever it is. And they did something that wasn't awesome. And they didn't mean anything by it. They weren't trying to hurt you, but they told you to shut up. And so then like, oh, okay, I can't upset my parents, whatever it is. Those things don't get worked out
Mhm.
except in the mind of a little kid. And when we do that, we blame ourselves and we hold on to, I need to be different, or I need to be perfect so that people will be kind to me or love me or whatever. Those things are the filter that we then interact with regular life with. And the enemy plants a lot of that stuff. And what happens is we don't even know that it's there. We didn't align with it, but we're following the enemy in that space. And
Mhm.
so when we go into healing, we interact with God. It's not me telling you what, you're afflicted with or whatever. Like, I'm not that smart. The the Lord himself interacts with you. We facilitate a prayer. It's really quiet. People's heads don't spin around. There's no projectile vomiting. Like, it's not like that.
Right.
For
Just
those of
to
us
be
that grew
clear.
up in the 80s and saw The Exorcist, like, it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
It's a very quiet, respectful interaction. Joyful, loving. It's wonderful. And the Lord is invited into some of those places, and we discern what truth is, because the
Mhm.
truth sets us free. And so we invite God into these things, and he chooses the moment. And we know enough about how to facilitate this so that you don't get injured by it. I've talked to way too many people that have been through healing experiences where they've been traumatized by having to relive a moment in history. Like, you never do that. You
Yeah.
never relive that. You see it from third party position, and you're safe in that. And so we walk with people as they navigate that. And then if there's something that needs to be told to scoot, then you do that. And
Mhm.
it's pretty easy, and there's no drama around it. But what happens is then and the enemy's allowed to be there because of permission we've given it by believing lies or making vows, and then the
Mhm.
behavior that follows walking in that. And so that
Mhm.
opens more doors. So there's that permission piece. And then there's the other piece. I do talk to people, they're like, well, I cast him out. And I'm like, well, whose authority did you use there? Like, did you really believe that you have the authority to tell the enemy to scoot? If you don't really believe that, there's that, you
Right.
know? Yeah. And people are like, oh, that's demon stuff. And it's like, well, you got to look at what Jesus did when he was here. And we don't make a big deal out of it. There's no drama around it. It's actually a very quiet process, and really beautiful. But it is a matter of just taking authority. The other piece of it is, well, what does it mean to walk it out?
Right.
Because once you have set all this stuff up legally in the heavenlies, in the spiritual realm, you need to be able to go deal with the reality of the trenches in your brain, the history of thinking the same way that you've had. And we tell you how to do that, and we provide you with some awarenesses and create opportunity for that, because when you repent, that means to think differently, right? Change your thinking. So because you can think differently, you then act differently. And so we help you navigate that. And we don't leave you alone. Like, we're here after the conference too, to help people navigate showing up differently in their life. And all of that gets tested, and it's normal. And then you're in this space of, wow,
Mhm.
like, night and day difference. It's shocking and amazing, and I really want this for everybody in the universe. I really do. Ah,
Is that why you created the conference? I mean, because it sounds like this is something God gave to you and you just want to share it with the world.
it's funny. The first conference we had, I told our operations director, I said, I think we need to get people together. She
Mm.
goes, okay, to do what? And I said, I'm not sure. She goes, okay, what people? I said, I don't know that either. And she, but I just had this inkling that we were supposed to get together and do something, right?
Mhm.
And it's evolved from a very God focused, here's what the Bible says about conflict, here's some skills, here's some practice, to somewhere along the line about 7 years ago, 8 years ago, we discovered that no, you can speed this all up by experiencing healing. And so we
Mm.
dove into that. And it's shocking. And that's why over 66% of the people that came last year are coming back this year. Because once you start growing, you can't get enough, and they want more. We don't arrive this side of heaven, right? We just keep growing and becoming more free and more free. And God keeps opening up doors, and there's no shame, there's no condemnation in it. It is energizing and amazing. I had a client last, gosh, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, tell me that they had zero self-judgment around any of the things that God has shown them recently. That, and a month before, they were just having the most horrible, shame-filled, guilt-ridden experiences looking at themselves.
Mm.
And it was just, and I was praying for them to be able to be humble, And so many people feel like they have to wrestle that humility. But when you get healed, there's no effort around being humble. It's like, yeah, I screwed that up. I feel terrible about that. I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me? Like, and it costs you nothing. You just have compassion for the other person,
Mhm.
and you don't judge yourself. There's no judgment. If we go all the way back to the garden, that's what we did, right?
Right.
Judged. And so
Right.
now moving forward, we can grow without judgment being the fuel for that growth. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's so amazing how it unfolds, the trust in God, the respect for yourself, and how that shows up in your relationships everywhere.
Mhm,
You start to trust yourself more with difficult situations, and you don't betray yourself anymore. You honor how you feel, you honor God's truth, and
mhm,
all that guilt and shame just kind of falls away. That's what I love about it. So, okay, before we wrap up, I just want to ask a couple more questions in case
mhm.
some of our listeners are wondering. Are there going to be men there? And if not, and I want a man there, i.e., my husband or my brother or my son, is there going to be any future opportunities for couples or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm really looking toward what God's going to do with this.
Mhm.
This is actually the last year that we're going to be at the Jesuit Center,
Mm,
where everybody's staying on site in the same place. We do the teaching and we eat all the meals and we sleep there, all of it. We haven't landed on where it is next year, but we haven't we don't know what's going to happen. But we do know that next year's conference will also have a live streaming opportunity. This one does not. There will be one dude at our conference this year. It is a pastor who is also he's our marketing guy. He handles our communication, and he's so graciously said, "Hey, can I just come help you with the cameras and stuff because we're recording it also." I don't know what we're going to do with it after that, but they just want to record it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So that's the one dude. And then in the future, I hope so. I really hope so.
yeah,
For the
that's
men.
awesome. All right. So I hope you got some inspiration today and maybe at least a better idea of what happens. There's so much more than what we've shared today, but we only have so much time and we really want you to join us. So hopefully you got a taste and enough to entice you to just book that ticket and join us. So what will you do with that information that you have today? We also invite you to check out our website, greaterimpact.org. We have a free PDF called 5 Tools for How to Stop Walking on Eggshells for you to download. And we also have other episodes for you to check out that are helpful as well in this journey. We thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.